One of my favorite phrases, it was given to me by a friend of mine some time ago, was that the only person who really likes change is a baby with a wet nappy. Now, be that as it may, we do actually like change. That's not actually totally true. But change that is imposed on us, we tend to be a bit resistant to. And boy, have we had some change of late. And we've all pretty well had to rethink the way we do things and change the way we do things. And that is why I've called this 1 hour, 60, 90 minutes webinar, Rise to the Occasion. And I'm going to be flitting between slides like this and also be able to talk to you as well, eyeball to eyeball. And it's all about coming across more effectively on video whilst still retaining that humanity, because a lot of the time that humanity takes a bit of a leap out the window. And can I encourage you all, please, to, if you haven't already, mute your microphones. That's the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, to make sure you're muted. There is a chat box. So if you want to, I won't be able to see the chat all the time because I'm going to be largely presenting, but I will be clicking in from time to time. And to see the chat box, I have to come out of this slide screen share, just so you know the mechanics of it all. And given what we've got to cover, there's not going to be much space for questions during the webinar, but I'm going to be leaving plenty of space afterwards to do that. Now, some of you I know very well. Some of you I've never met before. For those I haven't, I just want to give a little brief, very brief background to who and what I am. To begin with, I was a soldier when I left school for 5 years. I ran a training wing in my regiment. After that, I went into the city for a couple of years, which I really didn't enjoy. And after that, I worked for an American company called Procter & Gamble for 6 years. And for the last 30 years or so, I've been full-time training and developing people. And these are some of the clients I work with in that time. There's over 70 of them and almost the same number of nationalities. And I'm not saying this to impress you in any way at all. I'm just giving you a little bit of background to me. And what I did do just before this webinar, I hauled up the latest LinkedIn recommendations. That's the latest page, just to give you a flavor for the sort of people I'm working with. Top left-hand corner, a guy called Mike Wardell. He runs a tech company up in Newcastle. Bottom left-hand corner, that's Caroline Thomas. She's HR director of B&Q, and I worked with pretty well all their board, the chief executive, and quite a few of their other people too. Top right-hand, Ollie Morrison, runs a small tech company in London. Just gives you a feel for the, I suppose, the breadth of people I've been lucky enough to work with. And just to give you a bit of faith that what I'm about to share with you works, two of my clients, just two, I mean, God knows, a lot has happened with the others too, but two that I think were particularly gratifying. One was in facilities management. The other one was in financial services. They run pension funds and things. And within a few weeks of working with me, they'd actually combined, put them together, just under £2 billion worth of new business. And I'm immensely proud of that. I'm very chuffed with it. I've written a few books. The one in the middle is the one I recommend. They're all available on Amazon, but the one in the middle, if you want to take things further, called Blow Your Own Horn, is the biggest of the lot. And I also have a free app on both the Google Play and the Apple App Stores called Ovation. I'm not going to waste your time now by telling you what's on it, but there is a lot in there. So if you haven't downloaded it, do. There's no sneaky in-app upsells, I promise you. Well, not at the moment anyway. It's standalone, and I think you'll get a lot from it. And what I'd like to achieve today with you all is to share a few pointers and a few tips and a few practical tools about how to do this, how to come across on video, how to create and deliver a clear message, and to speak both with authority and humanity, so that when this is all over, and it will be over, your clients and your potential clients will remember you for the right reasons. And I'm going to cover this in three unequal sized chunks. The first thing we're going to do is have a quick, what you might call reality check, as in, what do people want right now? What are people expecting right now? Some of this we can hallucinate, but I've got a few thoughts about that I'd like to share with you. Secondly, I'd like to cover some specifics about how to come across both with authority, not in a big breast-beating, I'm the expert sort of way, but in an authoritative way, but also a warm and human way, because there's many a trap that one can fall into on video. And then, if you'll indulge me, I would like to spend a few minutes talking about something I've just developed for you that I think you'll find extremely handy. It won't be for everybody, but it'll be for quite a lot of you, I think. And I'd like to just share that with you. But do hang around. I won't spend ages on that, but do hang around for the third part, because this is where I show you how to nail your message, to absolutely nail it. And it works pretty well every time. And I want to take you through that. So runtime, I practiced this. One time I got an hour, one time I got 1.5 hours, but I'll go at a bit of a pace. So take plenty of notes. Make sure you got water there. I have. I'm already needing some. And if you can, make sure the distractions are to a minimum. If you've got animals around, maybe shut them outside. If you've got kids likely to come in, I mean, I don't mind, you're all muted, but it'd be rather good for you if you could be focused on this. Okay, reality check. Well, one of the things that people are asking at the moment is, what do they want right now? What do your clients, what do your people want right now? Well, one of the best ways to answer that, frankly, is to hallucinate a little. What would you want right now? And the answer, in many ways, is rather beautiful and rather simple. And it's this: what we've always wanted, but that we don't often get from people, be it clients or suppliers or family even. So let me unpack that a little with you. Reassurance. Reassurance that one day this will be over and the business will be still there, and hopefully you'll still be standing and they'll still be standing. Now, you don't want to lie and give people false hope at times, but a bit of reassurance that people out there are caring for them and caring about them is really handy. So that's not just now, it's particularly now, but we always want that anyway. Loyalty. People are going to remember, after all this, how they were treated. And I don't know about you guys and girls, but I've already come across some pretty gritty bits of this when I haven't been treated very well of late by some suppliers and some people I use. And I'm going to be shifting when this all comes across. But one thing came through very strongly to me the other day, about 2 days ago, on BBC Newsnight. The journalist was asking the chief executive of NatWest, I think it was, making a statement saying, look, there's a lot of small businesses out there that have been promised money by the government through the banks, and they're just not getting it. And there was one guy, he ran a small cafe, and he said, I got suppliers to pay, I got staff to pay, where is his money? And her answer was, well, you know, we normally get about 5,000 calls a day for this sort of thing, but now we're getting 20,000. Hello? This has been happening now for the last 3 weeks, and NatWest only seemed to start gearing up for it. And I'm sorry, but I'm a little bit jaded about banks. I don't think, I mean, can you name me one bank that's really much different to another? Probably not much. But I think people will be shifting after this crisis is over. And they will remember how they were treated by you and by me. And I'll leave you with that thought. Bottom right-hand corner, Warren Buffett. Now, a lot of people have asked me, who's Warren Buffett? He's perhaps the most successful investor alive today, known as the Sage of Omaha. He has billions of funds under management. And that's his quote. I think rather lovely. Honesty is a very expensive gift. Don't expect it from cheap people. I think one of the things we've always wanted and we expect right now is honesty at the moment. And I think the governmental briefings, which aren't always terribly smooth, but when I know that one minister and two advisors, often Chris Whitty and Professor Vallant, stand in front of the cameras in Downing Street, I've been quite impressed by a lot of that, because they're not, the politicians flannel a little bit, but the two scientists either side, or the chief medical officer or chief nursing officer, have been pretty damn straightforward with what's happening. And I think that goes in. So I think people want honesty. We always want honesty, but now particularly. Yeah, and a sense of humor. I mean, we're going through pretty grim times, but keeping it lighthearted with a touch of wit is always welcome. Now, what I mean by this is appreciation. And I want to say a little bit more about that when we come to the next slide. But it's a fundamental human need. And through some unofficial research that I've done, I've discovered that we don't always get a lot of it. We really don't. So let me develop that more in a second. But also one thing is that we don't want to be taken advantage of right now. And a very close friend of mine told me that part of London where she lives, rather smart part of London, Holland Park, that last week there were people going around door to door selling coronavirus testing kits that were fake, which I think is an execrable thing to do. So we don't want to experience that. And now I have a lovely phrase that comes from one of my coaches, as some of you will know, Adam Brooks. He said this, and I just think that's lovely. We need to demonstrate that to other people. So how to do that? Well, a couple of things. Having a clear message. The last 200,000 years of mankind's existence have taught us a couple of things. One of which is we tend to respond to, we tend to follow, we want to group around people who display certain leadership characteristics, which include certain purposeful gestures, a deep tonality of voice, but also a crystal clear message, crystal clarity of message. And we'll be getting onto that as the third part of this webinar, how to craft a really clear message. We want to be reassured as well. And we want to be appreciated, which I mentioned earlier on. And let me share this little bit of unofficial research with you. Over the last 30 years, I've been lucky enough, privileged enough to work with some extraordinary people and extraordinary clients. And depending on the program and who's there, I often popped in the question, because this was largely around the context of feedback. I was saying, when is the last time you left work at the end of a day saying, if I get one more pat on the back, I'm going to resign? If somebody tells me one more time what a really useful member of the team I am, what fun I am to have around, and what good work I do, I'm going to hand in my cards. Because I can't take all this praise and recognition. It's too embarrassing. And whatever the client, the answer or the response is nearly always the same. It's sort of, you got to be joking. Or, haha, I wish. Almost exclusively from some of the most famous companies in the land. And so I said to them at the time, and I'm sort of saying to you now, so we established we don't get it very much, which means we don't give it very much. And if I sense the atmosphere is right, I think I want to say, okay, so you don't give it at work. What about at home? When's the last time you said to your other half, darling, I just think you're amazing. What you do when I'm out at work, and when I come home, the smell is amazing in the kitchen, and you cook like a dream. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it. How often does that happen? Rhetorical. But the point I'm making is it's a fundamental human need. And if you appreciate people specifically, rather than just a general thing, tell them exactly what it is you're appreciating, that really goes home. one example here of how not to do it, and this is a personal one. My eldest nephew works for a major international drinks company, and he's brand in Madrid, and he's brand manager of one of their biggest brands. You will know the brand and you'll know the company. And about 9 months ago, they had a restructuring, as businesses have been doing for the last 20 years. And their way of announcing it was to get people into a large conference room or a theater, I think it was, and they give them a slideshow. And they say, this is the new, boom, drinks company. If you're on these slides, you're part of the team. If you're not, you're out. Sorry, but goodbye. That's the way they told their often very valued people that they were no longer required. I just find that quite extraordinary. And sincerity is another thing that we are looking for, or that we want to receive. And I just want to share something with you, and I'm going to eyeball you for this. So I'm stopping sharing my screen for a second. I don't know if you can see me here, but I will take my glasses off and look directly at the screen. In my days at Procter & Gamble, which was a phenomenally well-managed company, I mean, it's extraordinary. I was very lucky enough to work for it. I didn't realize how good it was till I left it. Because all the 70 companies I've worked for since, not one of them, frankly, holds a candle to the way P&G look after their people and after their clients. But there was one major glitch that I came across. At Christmas time, our sales director came down to do the rah-rah speech, and he did this. So I need you to watch me for this one. And he said, of course, our most important asset are our people. And I thought, really? That doesn't strike me as terribly sincere or warm. He actually had to break down, look at his speech, turn the page over to tell us. So, getting back to what I'm sharing with you. Now, so to make people feel appreciated, to reassure them, to be sincere when you're doing it, and also to be crystal clear in your message, really helps. So that's the reality check part. Now let me move on, if I may, to the second part, which is about portraying authority and humanity. Well, loads of ways, how, I hear you ask, but loads of ways of doing this. But perhaps one of the best of all is just to talk to people right now. Now, I'm going to fess up here. I have not been as good at this as I might have been over the last couple of weeks. But as soon as this webinar is over, tomorrow and the weekend, next week, I'm going to be blitzing a lot of my clients, old clients and potential clients, with the sort of things I'm going to share with you here. And there are so many ways of doing it. Now, if you have an Apple device, you may remember, or you may know this thing called FaceTime, which is, I remember when Steve Jobs launched it, he said, hey, it's just like Star Trek, Captain Kirk and the communicator saying, hey, Scotty, where are the weapons? It's all there on screen. And we now take it for granted so much, but that's a nice informal way of seeing people and talking to them and communicating with them, if they have an Apple device. And of course, with your clients, if you have their mobile number, you have their WhatsApp. And it's a really rather nice, informal, but warm way of sending a message. Now, you can, as you know, send voice recorded messages on there. You can send recorded video messages on there, but you can also do live video on there. Now, some people are a bit iffy about going live on video, particularly to a client. So you can record messages beforehand and put them up on WhatsApp, and personal ones too. And slightly more formal, but not really, is LinkedIn, where also you can send voice messages. I think it's only restricted to a minute. But hearing your voice, or hearing somebody's voice talking to you, rather than just the bland text in a script, is a bit warmer. And you can also send video messages on there too, either live, which some of you may feel a bit dodgy about, or recording it. And I'm going to be recording personally a lot of personal video messages to people and sending them on LinkedIn to them, so they can both see and hear you. What we're using now, Zoom, and you can get a hell of a lot more people on there, as you know. Now, I'd like to carry out, if I can, a little thought experiment right now. And I'm going to come out of the screen in a second, but first of all, I'd like you to, in the chat box, which is the bottom of your screen in the middle of the screen, in the chat box, I want you to put your answer, if you're willing to play, to this question is, how would a good boss or a mentor or your coach be right now? How would you like them to be right now? What would you observe from the way they were with you right now? So let me come out of that and have a little look at the chat. Let's see what some of you are saying. Honest and transparent, to listen, encouraging, empathetic, communicative, listening, understanding, positive, empathy, supportive, listening, available and clear in mind, brilliant, consistent and clear. Interesting. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to now move that chat to the side. Well, so much of what you've said there, been kind enough to put there, is not only in the content, is it? It's in how they do it, showing empathy, attentive. I just see Zhang, attentive at the same time, confident with a vision. Confidence isn't just portrayed by what you say. Kind isn't just portrayed what you say, it's how you say it, is it not? And I wanted you to come to that conclusion yourselves. I mean, this is funny and human-like, definitely, as opposed to robotic. So let's go through some of those things. How do you portray authority and humanity and come across the sort of ways you've all just mentioned in that little exercise? Well, first of all, pace at which you talk to others, particularly online. Now, pace is a mixture of a couple of things, one of which is speed, how fast you talk, and the other part of it is the amount of ideas per minute you put in there. And it's very tempting, it's very easy to talk very fast indeed, and also cram an awful lot of ideas per minute in there, but the brain can only take in so much. And it's one of the side effects of adrenaline. Happens particularly when you're in front of an audience physically, but it also happens when you're going live on video. The nerves are going, mine are going right now. And they have been since I started, I'll be honest with you, I'm not immune to this. And if you shove too much at people too quickly, it's just too much. And also you may notice that an awful lot of business language, business communication, is non-sensory specific. As in, it doesn't contain many seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching words. They've been removed to make it so-called professional. But if we put some sensory specific language in there, that really helps. I'll tell you something else that really helps. Now, that old guy is Confucius. And he said, many wise are one of the things, but he said one thing in particular that I think is particularly applicable right now. He said, I hear, I forget. I see, I remember. I do, I understand. And if you use more visual descriptions, or what I would call word pictures, in your video communication, that encourages retention and also makes it more human. And visual analogies, like you've all heard, you know, this is the size of 3 football pitches or something. But if we take something like, there's often an oil disaster somewhere in the world, and as soon as that happens, you may see people comment saying, ooh, 60,000 barrels a day flowing into the Gulf or something. Well, do you know what 60,000 barrels looks like? No, nor do most people. But if you just do a little research and find out dimensions and things, you could say something like, well, imagine the dome of St. Paul's filling up with oil twice a day. That's what's coming out of this well. So if you use visual analogies like that, I would call them word pictures, it helps people retain them. And useful little phrase like this, just imagine, or picture this, and then follow that with your visual analogy. Not only is it quite a nice little phrase, but it also has a slightly more steely intent. It's what's known as an embedded command. And when you say to a viewer, just imagine, the brain goes, whoop, it opens up, so you can slide in the picture. So use more visual language if you can. Now, one of the really useful things to do, and I hope I'm demoing it now a little, is to zip your lip, as in pause. I tell you who's pretty good at this, although he's laid up at the moment, is Boris Johnson. Whatever you think of him as a being, as a man or a politician, he's actually a very good communicator. And you may find, although he talks quite fast sometimes, he sometimes pauses in the middle of a sentence and often in the strangest places. But it's actually quite effective. Now, I'm not suggesting you pause in the middle of a sentence in strange places, but where there's a comma or a full stop, do put in a pause. Because this goes back to adrenaline again. Often when you're talking to someone on video and face-to-face, the adrenaline can be going. And one of the side effects of adrenaline is it distorts your sense of timing. What in reality is about a second feels often, if you're looking at the camera, like 10 seconds. And most people never pause for long enough. So do inject more of those into your communications. That not only shows authority, but it's what humans do, or most humans do. They just don't gabble straight on. We touched on language earlier on, but Churchill said lots of wise and wonderful things. But one of the things he said was that you want to use short words, short sentences, and old words. And by old, we don't mean prithee and zounds and knave and thee and thou, not that sort of old, but words that have been in pretty common usage for about 40, 50 years or so. We all have a rough idea of what they mean. I mean, thinking of thee and thou, I used to be in a Yorkshire regiment, and Yorkshiremen often talk like that, you know, thee, how's that doing? Thee and thou, and it's lovely, it's charming, but that really is only Yorkshire. We need to use plain down-to-earth language because so much of business communication is just so-called professional jargon. And not just rubbish like one of my clients recently came up with a customer-centric delivery framework. Answers on a postcard, please. But words that have been, should we say, hijacked. Platform is one of them. Now, when you were younger, what was a platform? Probably something a train left from. And that's what we have in here. But now there's all sorts of platforms and portals and everything else. Framework. What the freaking hell is a framework? And particularly if you link it with the word strategic, you say we've got a strategic framework underpinned by a, you know that people don't really know what they're talking about. So I keep the language as far as you can, down to earth. And I want to tell you a little anecdote here. I mean, I could go on for ages about this. It's a bit of a bête noire of mine. But in one of my recent masterclasses, I had a charming lady who I think was in business development. marketing. And she said, I've got a Darren for this. And we said, lovely. What's a Darren? And she said, well, in my village, I have this lovely guy called Darren. He's a carpenter, lovely man. And every time I'm going to give an important talk, I buy Darren a couple of beers and I run it past him. And he has one job, and that is to notice if there's anything he doesn't understand in it at all. And then I change it. So I deliver it in a language that everyone can understand. And I want one more anecdote to illustrate the power of this. I started going to talks or lectures by an absolutely lovely man called Nick Nelson, who one of his expertises is history of art. And I went to a couple of his talks, not expecting much, and he was brilliant. And then I thought, well, perhaps my family would like this. And I invited my mother, and this talk was going to be from 10:30 on a Saturday, 10:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. So with lunch, so quite a long sesh. And my Ma's never painted at all, not interested. My late mother, shall I say, wasn't interested in art. And she was then, I think about 88, 89. I said, Mum, would you like to come? She said, yeah. And my niece was staying with my mother at the time, who was then 18, depressed, fretting about a boyfriend, always on her phone. And again, not at all interested in art. And I said to them both, look, would you like to come? And my niece, bless her, said, well, Uncle Mikey, if you say it's good, it'll be good. No pressure then. Anyway, he held us all in the palm of his hand from 10:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. Largely because he was enthusiastic, he really knew his subject, but there wasn't any language that anyone couldn't understand. And I think that was almost the gold standard. So almost anybody, I think, should be able to listen to you talk on video or wherever else and understand everything you're saying. And strip out as much of the jargon as you possibly can, because that just gets in the way. Music. Well, it's not music as in playing an instrument in this case, but this is the music in your voice. And the music in your voice is largely your intonation, the high and the low. And you and I know people are very good at this. We all know people, and God knows you must have seen enough videos of late and been to enough talks on people talking in an incredibly monotonous way. And it may be absolutely fascinating what they're saying to you, but there's absolutely no variation in pitch. And you know the effect of this, it just sends people to sleep. So have the intent of varying your intonation quite a bit, but also what will help you is if you keep your eyes, your chin horizontal. In other words, keep your camera in line with your eyes. You don't have to look down, because as soon as we look down, about an inch, just that's all it takes. It has the effect of flattening pitch, flattening intonation. And that's probably not what you want to do. So vary your intonation. Also, using your hands as you talk really helps with that as well. So please vary your pitch. Now this is I've just touched on this one. Look into the camera eye. Now this is weird, because right now I'm looking right at the top of my iMac, hopefully eyeballing you, and you can see my eyes. But I can't really see much of the screen, and I certainly can't see any of you, because I'm looking at the camera, doing my very best to connect with you. But very few people do that, because it's counterintuitive. Most of the time, if I use the example right now, if I look down at the screen and the slides that I have and look across to some of your pictures, your screenshots, I'm completely disconnecting with you. Can you feel that? I'm looking almost anywhere else but at you. And it's almost, if you don't look at the camera, right into the camera, which we're not used to. We're not a professional newsreader. We're not used to looking right in the camera. Most people, when using their smartphones or their tablets or anything else, or their laptops, are looking at the screen, which is fine, but realize that it's not as powerful as looking at the camera. If you don't look at the camera, it's almost like having a conversation like this with somebody. Yeah, I'm listening. Go on. I'm listening. No, you're not. And this takes practice. It isn't natural to look at that little black dot in the top of the lid. So do practice it. And funnily enough, and you may have found me falling short a lot on this today, because it gives me a challenge, is smiling. I think I'm quite smiley most of the time, but I know when I look back at some of the videos I make, I can see how po-faced I look, and I beat myself up mercilessly. But do smile. Smile more than you would in person, because there's only a small representation of you on a smartphone screen or a laptop screen. So your normal nice smile won't probably come across. So do smile more. Because behavior breeds behavior. And when you pull your muscles up into a smile, that makes a difference. And people like it, and they start smiling back and they start feeling good. If you look po-faced and serious all the way through, guess what they're gonna feel? So behavior breeds behavior. Is this making sense right now? Can you just give me a quick thumbs up? Am I on target or on track at the moment? Yay! I've got a few from some of you. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, well, that's about some of the ways you can come across with greater authority and humanity, rather than just a damn android on these things. Let's have a little brief look at so-called tech and setting. Now, first of all, the background behind you. Now, there's a lot of schools of thought about this. I have deliberately chosen to invite you into my sitting room today. Bit of a risk. Some people would say, oh, it's me, but it's me. That's my home. This is actually where I work from, and my desk is in my sitting room. So I'd like to be genuine about it. And it's not perfect. There's too much going on in that corner, I know. And the lighting isn't absolutely fantastic, but I've got a little ring light across here. And so my face is at least lit up a little bit. Bit pale, but at least you can see me, and hopefully you can see my eyes. So I wouldn't fuss too much about the background, but obviously not too scruffy. And I've had to move a few things that were sitting on chairs before I did this today. Talking of lighting, yes, you could invest a huge amount in getting a whole load of lights, and some of you will have done, and that's great. To be well lit is good, but I wouldn't worry too much about it. But the one bit of kit with lighting that is very handy is this. It's called a ring light, not surprisingly. They're about 100 quid, I think, on Amazon. And you can stand it right behind your desktop or your laptop. Or if it's an iPhone, a smartphone or a tablet, as you can see in the illustration, you can stick that in the middle. And that really lights up the front of your face. So you can almost do without all the other lights if you do that. That's a handy bit of kit. If you're using a smartphone or a tablet, it's worthwhile putting it on a tripod. And you can buy little ones for about a £5 that you can stack on a whole lot of books in front of you. But it'd probably be more useful and more flexible to get a bigger tripod that it can stand literally person height. But the one thing to remember, again, when you're using a smartphone or a tablet, is make sure it's at eye height and you are looking directly into the camera. Really important. Now, we've talked a lot so far about the text, the visual side of it, but funny enough, since we're talking video, maybe the most important thing, would you believe it, is sound. Picture's important, of course it is. That's why we've been talking about background and lighting, etc. But actually, the most important thing on a video is sound. Now, hopefully, the sound you're getting from me right now is okay, straight, pretty good. I've tested it out a few times. I've recorded myself and listened to it. One of the things that allows me to do that is I have a relatively new, actually very new, iMac in front of me with a decent microphone in it. But a lot of desktops and certainly laptops don't have very good microphones. So if you are going to use it, desktop or a laptop to video with, to get your message across on video, you may have to invest in a separate microphone. They're not very expensive. And if you're using smartphones, it's definitely worth getting a microphone that plugs in. So you can, and the ones I favor, to be honest with you, are the little lapel mics. Just where it, if you make your hands like this and do that, where your bottom finger, in my case, my thumb comes to, is roughly where you should put it on your clothing. But that makes a big difference. It's good to have good sound. Hope this is making sense to you so far. Well, that's the second part over. We've looked at, first of all, the reality check. Secondly, we looked at some tips about how to come across with some authority and humanity. And we've just touched on a few technical things. Now, very briefly, and it will be briefly, I'd like to share with you a couple of things I've got coming up. And on the 23rd of April, I'm going to be running a one-day online masterclass called Influencing with Integrity. And there is the aim. It's a much more broadened version of what we're doing today. And how's it going to work? Well, I'm only going to take 10 people on it because I want plenty of interaction. And if we have too many, even though it'd be financially much better if I had a lot, I want to keep it small so that I can give people the time they need. It'll be all day, as you can see, 9:30 to 6:30. It'll certainly be practical. There's no theory whatsoever in this program, and it's highly interactive. And you'll be giving two talks. The first one you're going to make for me beforehand, put in a Google Drive folder, which I'll send you the link for, so I can see it beforehand and give you feedback on the day of how you come across. The second one you'll give in the afternoon, putting all the things I've shown you together, and you'll deliver about 5 minutes. You'll deliver it to us online, and I'll give you direct feedback on that. What will we cover? Certainly delivery, and even in more detail about delivering on video, and emphasizing more of the traps too, that are so easy to fall into, not only face-to-face, but definitely on video. Being on video is a different skill to being face-to-face. We'll also look at building rapport in that first vital 90 seconds. And that's one of the things I'm going to be showing you after this in point 3, in nailing your message. Get people on your side to begin with. The rest is a lot easier. And we'll link that with a structure that works almost every single time. In fact, I would go further. It works every time. It works for a 3-minute message, or it works for a 45-minute one, whichever. It works across the board. And it's been tried and tested for a very long time. And it's not clunky, but it really gives your talk shape. But the last thing we're going to look at is perhaps the juiciest of all. What I call the Nirvana touch, or the Nirvana tool. And I call it that because it literally is the Nirvana of presenting. It's what people have been looking for years and haven't found, which is why so many people use PowerPoint as their notes. Is I will show you on this masterclass, on this online intensive, a technique and a tool that allows you to install everything you want to say into your head without memorizing, so that everything comes out in the right order, you forget nothing, and you're looking at the camera 95% of the time. It's magic. And those who've experienced it, there's 1 or 2 on the program, on the call right now, who have done, it's extremely powerful. So that's what we're going to be doing. And just a reminder that will be covering the essence on this intensive that my 2 clients won just under £2 billion worth of it. So it works. It works. Obvious questions? Well, first of all, it's going to be on April the 23rd. So it's about 2 and a bit weeks from now. Let's do the nitty-gritty now. just to put this in perspective, my fee to business is $2,500 a day. That's what I charge. The masterclass, the open masterclass that people come on once, I run them every other month here locally, or I did do until the lockdown. That was $597. So if you do the maths, cut that in half, that's what it sort of should be. But I really want this to fly, and I want to encourage people who don't maybe know me to come and experience this and make a hell of a difference to the way they communicate in their business. So I'm not even going to do that. What I am going to do is this. It's going to be just for £97, which isn't exactly going to break the bank. It's far too damn cheap, but that's what I'm going for. And there's the URL for it. If you want to make a note of that now, I might even try and put it in the chat box. I had all this set up beforehand, but and that will take you straight to the page. Now, I'll be absolutely honest, there's only 10 places, because I can't deal with more than 10. I can, but it won't be the experience it should be. So I expect those to go fairly damn quickly. So if that does interest him, if you like a much more extensive version of this, when it's interactive and you're practicing it and taking your ability to communicate from here to here, there's the URL. Tap into it and see what you think. But some of you will not want, and I'd say I'd show you two things today. Some of you will not want to spend a whole day with me. You want something far more incisive and focused. And that's why I'm also doing what I call mini masterclasses. It's 1.5 hours. You choose the time from a scheduler. We'll do it on Zoom like this, and the whole session will be recorded, which I will send to you straight afterwards. So you can look back, review, revise, etc. Naturally, being one-to-one, it is completely focused on you and your personality and your style and your business. And you get my mobile number as well as 2 emergency calls throughout it. And I'm asking you $197 for that. And that is the URL, which takes you straight to that page for you to book a slot if you wish to do so. I absolutely love working one-to-one with people, and I think you'll feel this once we get going. But if that will be of value to you, we'll be just focused totally on what you want, it'd be fabulous to work with you. So there's the URL, one-to-one-with-michael.co.uk. Click it now. There's not, I'll be honest with you, there's more than 10 places for that, but on the one before I showed you, the one-to-one intensive, there's only 10. So I hope that is of interest and value to you. Now, we've been going for about 50 minutes. Now I'd like to move on to the third part of this webinar, is about nailing your message. Now, I'm going to focus, the interesting thing about messages or not, is that I've observed over the last, well, I don't, 30 years of working with some of the biggest companies, most famous companies in the land, and some very, very senior people. It's been my privilege to work with. Half the time, no, not just half the time, 90% of the time, they don't have a message. It's just a blur. It's often just a ramble. They may have a subject, but not a message. So I'd like to help you right now nail this a bit more. And I think the first thing, we mentioned this before, to start when you greet them, start with a smile on your face. Again, that relaxes people, particularly online. And then a lot of people get straight on with the subject. Hello, everybody. Well, here, lovely to see you all here. Well, the webinar title today is Rise to the Occasion. It's a little bit of a jump. And also people, your viewer or viewers might not be quite ready for it yet. And there's also no seduction in there. So I'd like to demonstrate what a funnel is. That's what those two little lines are. I call it the funnel. And it's a way of leading in to the subject you want to talk about. So if one or two of you would like to put in the chat box right now a subject you'd like me to demonstrate the funnel with, that would be handy. It literally almost become first time, first serve, because I'm only going to do a couple. So if somebody would like to type into the chat box a subject you'd like me working from home. Okay, thank you, Fiona. Good morning, everybody. It's extraordinary what we're going through right now. All sorts of things are happening and all sorts of changes are happening. And some of us are really rising to the occasion, forgive the pun, but it's challenging us in many different ways. We've got often children around us, we've got pets around us as well, but there are certain things you can do to allow you to focus and get the most out of your working day. So that brings me to the subject I want to talk about today, which is working from home. That's one. What we call resilience. Olivia. Good morning, everybody. It's interesting. I think every generation says that, oh, the young today, they're not as resilient as we were. They're not as tough. They're all snowflakes, etc. Do you know, I think every generation has said that. But it'd be really interesting to see in a few months' time, when all this is finished, how well this generation, the people alive now, have coped and dealt with it. I think we'll do it pretty damn well. But there are certain ways to help coping with it, which brings me to what I want to talk about today, which is the whole subject of resilience. And Steph, not reading off notes. That's the next one. The subject is not reading off notes. Good morning, everybody. When you're having a conversation with somebody you want to talk to or want to be with, be it family or friends or a client, one of the human things we like to receive and see is people looking directly at you. It creates humanity, it creates rapport. And one of the things that breaks it often, particularly in a business setting, is people look away and read their notes as they talk to you, or worse still, read a complete script. It's not engaging. And there are ways to do it that will allow you to come alive, allow the real you to come out to play and get your message across. And that is the whole subject of reading without notes. And it's that I want to talk to you about today. Reading off notes, that's right. So I hope that gave you some examples of how the funnel works. It doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be witty, it doesn't have to be funny, but it just grabs people in. Does this make sense so far? Can you just give me a thumbs up if this is landing at all? Cool. Then you get to introduce yourself. A lot of people start with this, saying, hi, my name is Michael, lovely to see you here. Well, that's okay. And there's no right or wrong about this. But I think if you need to introduce yourself, a lot of the time you'll be talking one-to-one with people you know. You don't need to say this. But if there are people you're talking to who you don't know, it's worthwhile just saying a bit of who I am and why I'm worth talking to. And you may notice a phrase I use with you today was, for those of you I haven't met yet, that there's a linguistic presupposition in that, which presupposes you're going to make the effort to meet them. But that's really only applies if it's like a biggish group like this. One-to-one, you won't need to say that. So that's the first part of getting your message. Now, let's move, that's the same part, but on a different slide. This is the message part, and it is missing in, I'd say, 90% plus of most people's presentations, talks, on video, formal or informal. And it's this. What's the purpose of it? What do you want your viewer to do or think or feel differently as a result of listening to you? And that's where you say it to them. So if we go back to the examples you gave me, Olivia, you mentioned resilience. So if an aim for a talk on resilience can be, the aim of this talk about resilience is to show you some tried and tested techniques and ways of thinking, both from today and from history, that really work when you practice them, so that you'll be able to find your way through this trying period with your head held high and come out even stronger at the end of it than you were at the beginning. What else? Not reading off notes. What I'd like to achieve over the next 20 minutes is show you, actually it'll be about 2 hours to be honest with you, is show you the way to present without reading off notes so that you can engage in a way that most people can't. What do we have before that? Working from home. The purpose of this brief talk about working from home is to share some practical, useful tools with you that won't upset your family or your friends, so that you can actually achieve probably even more when you work from home than if you were in the office. Do you get the gist? I want to share this with you so that you can do that. And I think you'll agree with me that most talks do not have this. They have a subject, but they don't have a purpose to it. And to paraphrase Lewis Carroll in Alice in Wonderland, he said, I think this is a Cheshire Cat talking to Alice. I said, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. And it's the same at a talk, if you don't. So this is part of nailing your message. It's the building a rapport bit with the funnel to begin with, so they know what you're talking about. The aim is what's in it for them, hearing you talk about it. And then you lay out your market stall, which is the addenda. And you can say, I want to cover this in 3 parts. Firstly, let's take working from home. Firstly, we'll look at the way to set up your office at home to make sure you can do that well. Secondly, we're going to look at some of the must-haves on your desk to make sure you can focus well. And thirdly, I'm going to give you several ways to keep your family entertained so that you don't get interrupted. So you get double threes. You get, first of all, I'm going to cover this in 3 parts. That's the first 3. Firstly, blur. Secondly, blur. Thirdly, blur. So they get 3 rammed at them twice. And I wouldn't make it more than 3. There is something, I don't think there's a subject on earth you cannot chunk into 3. And it's no coincidence that some of the most famous trilogies in history are spiritual. There's Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, the Holy Trinity. There's Vishnu, Brahma, and something else in Hindu. There's Isis, Osiris, and Horus in the Egyptian tradition. 3, there's all sorts of reasons for using 3, psychological, spiritual, etc. But the most fundamental reason is they're not going to take away any more than 3. So keep it to 3. So that is how to nail your message. It will sound very different coming out of each of your mouths, but on the one-to-one intensive, beg your pardon, on the one-day intensive and on the one-to-ones, we'll practice this so you have it absolutely nailed. So that's the end of the content from this. We've just come up to the hour. We covered 3 things really. First of all, we had a look at what people are looking for right now, what they want. And frankly, it's what they've always wanted, but we just haven't given it to them very much. So we need to ramp that up a little. Secondly, we looked at a few ways to come across with a little bit more authority and calm and the human side of you coming out to play. Then we looked at the 2 offers I have. And thirdly, we looked at how to nail your message. Just to remind you again, that was the aim. I wanted to share this with you, a few tips to do that, so that you encourage loyalty with your people and your potential clients. Let me remind you of the offers again. There's a 1-day intensive. That's the day, April the 23rd. Forget that URL, that's the wrong one. Rich has very kindly put the real one in the chat box. And that also is wrong. Didn't get that one right. It'll still get you there. Go to presentationmaestro.com, and if you go to the menu, you'll find it there. But it's much easier to go to one-to-one with Michael. .com or .co.uk. Cool. Well, I'd like to open it up now to questions, if any of you have any. So I'm looking at the chat box, and I'm now going to go stop sharing my screen. I don't really want to stop sharing my screen, but I will do. Brilliant. Thank you, Rich, for putting it in there. So, if any of you have a question, if I open up to, yeah, I can see quite a few there. Just maybe wave at me so I can see you, so I can unmute you. Oh yeah, Robin. Okay. Unmute audio. Thank you, Robin. How can I help? Robin, you're mute at the moment. Robin, can you unmute yourself? Or do I Where's Robin? I don't want to unmute you all. That would be, let me see if I can do it. Unmute. Right, Robin, can you talk to me now? Still can't hear you. Boom, okay. I'm going to take a real risk.
Just press the space bar. If
Robin,
you press down the space bar, it unmutes you temporarily.
Do you want to try that, Robin? Still not getting you. I'm seeing you. All right, I'm going to take a real risk here. I'm going to unmute you all so I can hear Robin. So please, don't say anything. You're all unmuted. Okay, Robin, go for it now. No, your volume is very, very, very low. Oh, dog's barking. I love that.
Rolly.
Robin, can I suggest, for some reason, type it into the chat box, if I can, if you will. Anybody else has a question for me? If you'd like to just wave so I can see you more easily. Yes. Claire. No, I'm not getting you either. Claire, I'm not hearing you. This is really frustrating. Claire, again, could I ask you to stick them in the chat box? Obviously, the mute and unmuting isn't working terribly well. So let me see what questions I've got. My gracious mind, how wish I? Robin, the question there: how important is humor in public speaking? Woo, golly. Well, let's. Thank you for that question. You mentioned public speaking. The context of this is largely on video, but I'm going to answer both. It's an interesting one. I personally have a pretty broad sense of humor. I will laugh at nearly everything. No, not everything. Nish Kumar, I don't find funny at all. But I laugh at most things, apart from what the Germans call Schadenfreude, which is somebody's tripping over and hurting themselves or something. A lot of people find that funny. I don't. But I laugh at most things. But more than ever now, there is, somebody's unmuted. If you'd like to mute yourself again, that'd be really kind.
Wendy.
We have to be careful today. And if I can put this in context by quoting a guy called Harold Evans, who was editor of the Sunday Times quite some time ago. Then he went to work in America. But he was talking about, in this case, American universities. But actually, I think it can apply almost anywhere. But let me quote what he said. He said, American universities are a hotbed of unimaginable minorities just waiting to be offended. Mm. Now he's talking about you, but I think that goes for most audiences out there. You be amazed how many hot buttons there are in people. Oh, I think that's most inappropriate. Oh, I think it's most offensive. So you've got to be careful. I personally would rather err on the risky side and say something humorous. I think if we strip all humor out of everything and everything that might conceivably offend anybody, there'll be no joy at all. And I don't know if ever some of the older ones amongst you might have watched or remembered a program called Rumpole of the Bailey, which was a series about an older barrister, written by a man called John Mortimer, who was a lawyer himself. And he was a real thorn in Maggie Thatcher's side because he was quite a socialist lawyer. But even he said, I don't agree with all this offense thing. He said, I think one should be offended 3 times a week and twice on Sundays. It is good for the soul. And I tend to go towards that side of things. But you just got to be careful, unfortunately, because there are a lot of people who get very upset and then either start a social media storm, or you might have seen this happening. Somebody, well, let me put this in a serious context. This isn't about humor, but this is about the reaction they can get. Harvard Law School. It was in there, to go to Harvard, you've got to be damn wealthy, or your parents have, and pretty bright. And in this particular class, the lecturer was talking about, and she used the phrase, this isn't humor, this is just words. She said, XXX violates the law. She used the word violate, as in violates the law. And one of her students had a fit of the vapors. Said, oh, violate. Oh, it's a trigger word. I mean, God knows, this student was going to, hopefully, to become a lawyer, and will have to deal with quite a lot of nasty things in the law, but she was triggered by the word violate and had to go lie down in a safe room somewhere with pictures of puppies playing on skateboards and a lot of Play-Doh. Even single words right now, let alone humorous or not humorous things, can create a reaction. So just need to be a bit careful. So thank you for that, Robin. A bit long telling you. Mark Davis, how can you stop yourself being distracted when you see people yawning to your presentation or playing on their phones? Well, first of all, thank you, Mark, for that very much indeed. People's phones are just a part of life right now, and it's quite interesting in this one. My sister used to work in India, and they have a sort of double whammy in India. It is considered extremely rude if somebody rings you and you don't answer. It's also considered extremely rude if you're in a meeting and you pick up a phone and answer it. So they had this, oh my God, am I gonna upset the caller? Oh God, am I gonna upset the speaker? Huh. But that's the Indian context. Smartphones are a part of people's lives right now, and they're gonna have them all the time, and they're gonna be checking their emails. I mean, it's just what people do. And I think you'd have to be fairly strict, stroke a bit stern, to say, please put your phones off and put them away. People are going to look at them. And your challenge, not just you, Mark, but all of us, is actually to be riveting enough, to be engaging enough, to stop them wanting to have to do that. Prevention's better than cure. And I circle back to one of the things I said earlier, not only about being interesting and engaging when you're talking to people, but losing completely all the techno bollocks that people talk. And in fact, I wasn't going to say it at the time. I'm going to say it now because it's so relevant. One of the guys I worked with a few years ago, he was a fund manager in an investment bank. Very good at managing money, but not terribly good at putting it across. And I worked with him and helped him strip out most of the banking language. And once every quarter, I think, or 6 weeks in an investment bank, the fund management desks invite the rest of the bank in to listen to them. And they say, basically, this is what our fund does, this is what it is, go sell it to your clients. And you might imagine, I don't know if you can or not, but I encourage you to, that these talks are full of the most unimaginable bankers' bollocks. Most people don't understand. and they don't understand it. I've tested this umpteen frigging times. I gave it to, I'll talk about it later. Stay with this one. And I wasn't there for his big day, but a friend of mine or an acquaintance of mine in the bank rang me up that afternoon. He said, Michael, you'll love this. I was there for the whole day, and I was sitting next to the marketing director of this bank. She was a very punchy American lady. And as we were walking out afterwards, she turned to me, referring to the guy I've been working with, and I'm going to use one rude word in this, but it's real because of what she said. She said, you know, that's the first fucking presentation I've understood in this bank for 3 years. And she was a bloody marketing director. And the other story I was going to tell you is a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I was lucky enough to give a talk for about a couple of hours, or a workshop, to the INSEAD Alumni Association in a cellar in the city. 50 people there, very bright people, all graduates of INSEAD Business School. And I thought I'd have a bit of fun. And I downloaded onto my iPhone the Harvard MBA 3-letter abbreviation app. And I said, look, guys and girls, I'm sure you know all this, but I just test you out a couple of things. And I got the app out and I said, what does XYZ mean? And 20 hands went up. And went, no, it means something else. What about FGU? 15 hands went up. No. And what about another? ABC. 10 hands went up this time, not quite so confident. Yeah, no. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case. Trouble is, you're using these expressions all the time. You haven't got a frigging clue what they mean. I would keep it plain and down to earth. So that was a little bit of a on Mark. I hope I've answered that to some extent. Claire, I sell artwork products. So my aim is to be pretty basic, to sell something. How would you suggest making this less blatant? Great question. Claire, thank you for that. How do you make it less blatant? Somebody, I'm going to mute you all. Mute all back. I hope I've muted you all. Can you still hear me? Can we have a little bit of a, great. Claire, thank you. Just to rephrase your question, you sell artwork, so your aim is pretty basic, to sell something. How do you make this less blatant? I think this comes, Claire, thank you very much for this, in the aim. When the last part of the webinar, I said how to nail your message. When you get to the aim part, and this doesn't just apply to you, we're selling artwork, this applies to all of us. You can say, well, what I'd like to do over the next 20 minutes is give you a little bit of a feel for the sort of work I do, the sort of art I create and who buys it and where it's displayed, so that you can see if it's the sort of thing you might be interested in. It's like offering. It's like, I don't know, if I'm a web designer or something, I could say, okay, what I'd like to do in this brief, we may call it, is give you a little bit of a look at some of the work I've done and some of the ways it works, so that you can see if this is the sort of thing that might fit your business. Does that make sense? You're offering it, you're making it more explicit, it's more honest in many ways, so you can still sell. And even if you're not just selling artwork, but you're selling big buck stuff, same thing. What I want to do is share what we do, who works with the sort of people we are, so that you can see if there's a fit between what we do and what you're looking for. Boom. That's, Claire, I hope that's answered you. Mina, one question, Michael. Would we get a recording of the session? Yes, I am recording it. Annabelle, one of the challenges is to make your videos very distinctive. Everyone is doing them. What do you suggest to help your own to really stand out? Thank you, Annabelle. By doing what we've done, frankly. Most people are appalling on video, and most people do not connect and engage, and most people ramble, and most people indulge, and most people use bloody jargon that gets in the way. You strip out all the jargon, you become engaging and authentic and energetic on camera, that's going to make you stand out. And I'd say the same thing to people in business. Generally, but your context here, Annabelle, is videos here, but let's broaden it. Before this sort of time, when we're all locked down, same thing. Why should anybody choose you anyway? Not just you, Annabelle, but us. Why should anybody choose us? There are stacks of, sorry, Sophia, hat makers out there, bankers out there, engineers out there, web designers, accountants, coaches. What makes you different? Show me one bank that is really much different from another one. Show me one insurance company that's really different from another one. Not many of us, apart from our personality, have a unique selling proposition. Not many. Some do, but not many. So the thing that makes you stand out, and I firmly believe this, you can probably hear in my voice, is that the way you connect and engage with people. And it's harder on video to do this than it is face-to-face. But that, I think, is going to make you stand out. Not necessarily the offer, not your background, as in background behind, and from your commercial background, is how well they feel you get them. And let me finish this answer to you, Annabelle, with a little anecdote for you all, because I think this sums it up completely. I was working with a branding agency, one of the bigger ones, a few years ago in London. And this young guy on the program, he was charming, just out of university, about 25, I think. And he said, I was at a potential client earlier this week, and I was 3 minutes into my spiel, and the client said, stop. And I thought, I've blown it. And the guy said, don't worry. He said, you haven't blown it. I know you can do the job. And I know the other 4 agencies I'm seeing this week can do the job. What I'm here to decide is, do I want to work with you for the next 2 or 3 years? Which I think encapsulates most of what we've been talking about. So I hope that helps, Annabelle. Mina, trying to take notes and miss bits. Okay, well, the recording will be available, so it's not a problem. Any tips on Ed, on repeating yourself, rambling? Yeah, very much so. Come on the intensive, and I will show you how to, this tool that I tell you, the Nirvana touch, the Nirvana tool, that will stop you rambling. That'll keep you on piste. You can choose to go off it at times, but you will get back on track again. That will help. It takes about 2 hours to teach it, but that definitely, I hope that helps. I think that's it. So thank you for those of you that stay behind. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Rich, if you're still there, could you put, oh, thank you, bless you. Oh, can I turn the sound up for that? Let me hear, unmute all. I want to, yes! Give it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much for coming. Stay safe. Look after your friends in London.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.